Hi, in this video I will be previewing some of the changes to the SCAR Divi API in SCAR Divi 3.35 using the current pre-release pre-alpha version, which is available in the pre-release repository. Now I'm going to open it right here. And as you can see, it's the 3.35 pre-alpha version. Now the first thing I'd like to discuss is the new client implementation. Now as before, and some changes might be implemented to improve this experience, but you still get your default crosshair, which you can use to select any part of the screen, which is basically what you're used to from every SCAR version since SCAR has existed. So I'm not going to tinker with that, so you can just rely on that always being there. And when you run a script, the client, which is selected using this tool, will be automatically transferred into the script engine, so you can access it from there. Do take in mind that now in this new version, the client in the script engine is completely separate from that in SCAR itself. So when you select a new client in SCAR, it's built to actually send the client to the script engine. So even when you're running a script, you can change the active client in the script using the crosshair. However, you can't change the client selected in SCAR itself from the script. So it's basically sandboxing the script a little bit in that way. So I'm going to take a closer look at the SCAR client object, which is the basic object on which the new client system is based. I'm going to define a variable here, SCAR client. Okay, and the first and one of the most important functions now available in SCAR is getClient. SCAR still has a selected client in the engine, and getClient will return the object that is selected in the engine to you. So I'll just store that in client. Now it's very important to know that you always have to have a valid and active client in the engine. So for example, if I were to try to free this object, SCAR will throw an error that the active client can't be freed. Now another method that's very important here is the setClient method, which basically sets a new active client like that. Okay, and there is another method called get, if I can spell it correctly, desktop client, yes. So it's called desktop client here. And this method basically creates and returns a new desktop client. So it's just a client which references the entire desktop. Do keep in mind that every time you call this method, a new client is created. It's good practice to free all of the clients that you create, except for the active client, of course. However, it's not required to do this. The engine will clean up all of the clients that have been created after the script is ran, because the SCAR client object is based on the SCAR object, which is tied into a new resource manager. So what I want to show here is when previously we saw SCAR throw an error when you try to free the active client. Now I'm going to create a new client with desktop client and use setClient to switch that to the active client. And then I just try to free the previous client, which we retrieved using getClient. And as you can see, it works just fine. So if I remove this line again, you can see you can't free the active client. If you do so, you'll get a runtime error and the script will just stop. Another thing you can't do is define an invalid client as the active client, which would be a null pointer or nil in SCAR. and that will also throw a runtime error. So that will also stop the script. So basically you can't really do anything wrong with this. If you do something wrong, you'll certainly know you're doing something wrong. Now the next thing I want to look at are some of the methods and stuff that is implemented for this new client system. If we take a look at the completion list for client, we see a capture method, capture X method, and obviously create 3 equals, and of course more importantly image area and input area. Now I'm going to discuss capture and capture X later on, but I want to take a closer look at image area and input area now. The image area is a T-box, just like input area, which defines the location of the input area you're working with in whatever you're trying to capture with the client. Now currently you can only use a window client, which just allows you to select a window, but this will basically in that case return the coordinates which you've selected to reference the 0.0 location on your device context of the window. So for example, normally if you select a window, this would be all the image area will always return a box with x1 and the y1 coordinates at 0.0, which is actually something you can change with this. So you can actually shift the coordinates to some other location from where you want to start the client from capturing. Now, not sure why you'd want to do this, but the possibility is there. So this new system basically gives you a lot more control over what you can do. The second thing is the input area. And this is basically the opposite of image area, as this does the same thing for the input. So for example, mouse coordinates, which is basically the main thing. In case of window client, this will show you, well, it will return a T-box which contains the absolute coordinates of the selected window on the screen, so relative to the 0.0 position of your desktop. And do note, it's the 0.0 position of your desktop and not of your shell window, which is basically for example, if you have a monitor left of the monitor which displays your taskbar below here, then the coordinates will be relative to the upper left corner of the screen, which has a taskbar, and not the left screen. So that basically allows you to have a lot of flexibility in regards to the input area. Now we also have a SCAR window client, and by default the client should always be a SCAR window client, as no other clients are currently available in the system. So I'm going to change that to SCAR window client, and we'll have to cast this to that type as well. As you can see, it runs just fine. And this object has some more stuff in there. So you've got clone. Now clone should eventually also be available in SCAR client, but currently it's only available in SCAR window client. And this basically allows you to create an exact copy of the client object. This could be useful if, for example, you would like to manipulate the object but keep keep the original as a copy somewhere. The DC is handled to the device context which you are currently working with. Then there's exists, which checks if the window handle you've selected exists or still exists. There's the handle, which is the window handle you're working with. I've already been through these boxes. And there's update, which will update the position of the client on the screen the device context, and well, everything else basically. The device context will also be freed unless you have assigned it yourself. And the boolean it returns is basically the value of exists. So if the window no longer exists, the boolean will be false. Finally, there's also the activate method. This might also be ported to SCAR client, and this will basically just activate your window. So to give a quick example of that, I'll start another instance of SCAR here and just select that, and when I run it, the other instance is activated. So that's a quick and dirty overview of the new client system. I may go into more details in future videos.